This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Good morning, you're watching News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. On the show this morning, Donald Trump hits back on India with Russian oil imports. But this time, India has sent a stern message to US President Donald Trump. We'll tell you all about that on the show today. Also on the show, we will be joined by Dilip Chenoy to help understand this entire debate about E20 ethanol mix. How vital is it for India's import bill, and does it really harm your car? And that's not all. On the show, we will also discuss with Mohandas Pai on the hefty education loan that students take to study abroad. Is the US job scene over? All that and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, the headlines that you're tracking for you this Tuesday morning. US President Donald Trump threatens to sharply raise tariffs on India over Russian oil trade, escalating tensions ahead of crucial trade talks set to be held on August 25th. India hits back at Trump's tariff threat, says it is being unfairly targeted by US over Russian oil imports that were initially encouraged to stabilize global energy markets. Government targets E27 ethanol mix by month end, but users cry foul over vehicle compatibility, engine health and mileage issues. Investor Education and Protection Fund Authority, or IEPFA's new digital portal set to go live soon aims to help investors reclaim unclaimed shares and dividends worth over 1 lakh crore rupees in just a few days. Market regulator Sebi proposes major revamp of related party transaction rules to ease compliance for top listed firms, suggests scale-based thresholds that could cut regulatory burden by nearly 60%. Zoho co-founder Sridhar Vembu warns against heavy education loans as Indian students deal with EMIs and no jobs in the US. The big question, is the dream US job story over? We discussed on the show. IndusInd Bank appoints veteran banker Rajiv Anand as MD and CEO for a 3-year term starting August 25th this year, subject to shareholder approval. Tamil Nadu CM M.K. Stalin inaugurates the VinFast first EV plant in India at Tuticorin at rupees 16,000 crore rupees. The plant is to create 3,500 jobs and scale up production to 1.5 lakh vehicles per year. And in global stories, Tesla grants 96 million shares worth $29 billion to Elon Musk as part of his 2025 CEO Interim Award, with payout tied to continued leadership for the next 2 years. The hits just keep on coming. Late last night, US President Donald Trump once again threatened India, vowing to substantially raise tariffs over India's continued imports of Russian oil. In a post on Truth Social, Trump claimed India is not just buying Russian oil in large volumes, but also reselling it on the open market for big profits. Trump is accusing India of funding the war in Ukraine. Now, Trump's new threat comes just days after he announced a blanket 25% tariff on Indian goods, along with the mention of an additional penalty, though no specifics have yet been provided. Now, Trump's latest warning also coincides with his growing frustration with Moscow for refusing to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine, even hinting at fresh sanctions on Russia. Finally, the Indian government has issued a strong statement in response to Trump's latest post. The Ministry of External Affairs has stated it has been targeted by the United States and EU over its purchase of Russian oil. India began importing from Russia because traditional supplies were diverted to Europe after the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, the United States at that time actively encouraged such imports by India for strengthening global energy market stability. The strongly worded statement also said that countries criticizing India's trade with Russia are themselves indulging in trade with Russia, that too on non-vital national compulsion. EU's trade with Russia in 2024 stood at $67.5 billion, significantly more than India's. Europe continues to import LNG from Russia. Meanwhile, US continues to import uranium from Russia for its nuclear industry and palladium for its EV industry. The double standards of US and EU have been called out clearly by the government of India, sending a strong message that India is not a pushover. Remember, trade talks between India and US are scheduled to resume on August 25th, but the diplomatic climate seems to have changed significantly. Economist Mithali Nikore joins me this morning. Mithali, first up, a 25% tariff, then a threat to expand it owing to Russian oil imports, then calling India and Russia dead economies, and now a moral pressure on India by US President Donald Trump saying that our oil imports from Russia are funding Russia's aggression on Ukraine. What's going on with Trump's public tirades against India?
I think honestly, Karthik, yesterday night when this came out, and I was speaking to a number of friends in the US at that time because I've just returned from a 3-week trip, to the US. All of the negotiators, all of the Indian delegation, this is really getting into a territory which is, quite hostile. Because for a president of a country, regardless of whether it is the United States, for president of any country, coming out and saying that, another country is doing arbitrage of oil in international oil markets, you need to have solid proof before you tweet out or say out something like this in the public.
Right.
I mean, giving an opinion on saying, oh, India is a dead economy. Of course, we have enough data to prove that we're not a dead economy. We are the world's fastest growing economy and have been for the last 3 years.
And the fifth largest economy, racing to be in the top 3 in the next 2 years. But Mithali, India doesn't import oil from Venezuela or Iran. And again, owing to US sanctions on them. Now, if Russia is also taken out of the equation, how is India expected to protect its own national economic interests?
No, so at this point in time, Karthik, as the MEA statement has made it very clear, we are going to purchase oil in international markets as per the international rules or based order and, the global order. So in that situation, of course, at this point in time, the sanctions on Russian oil are not there, which is why we have been purchasing this oil. And if you notice, even the Biden administration, at the time when the Ukraine conflict started, put down special permits for uranium and palladium for the US and EU to continue buying uranium and palladium for their nuclear industries and for the electronics industries.
With that logic, Mithali, Trump should now go ahead and impose tariffs on itself for buying uranium and palladium from the Russian market.
Absolutely, not just themselves, but also on Europe, also on the UK, also on all of the Western economies. So there is absolutely no reason for, singling out India. Even Brazil and China have been purchasing Russian oil, and he hasn't actually talked about this, with the BRICS countries. Of course, he's been very against the BRICS.
Right.
In other ways.
So stay with Russia and the Russian oil import, and let's talk about China, India, and as well as Brazil that buy oil from Russia. Now, if, let's say, hypothetically, these countries were to stop buying Russian oil, what's going to happen to global crude prices? These are already at elevated levels, above $70 a barrel. Can the world really afford putting Russian oil out of the oil equation?
So if you would have noticed, Karthik, in the last 2 months, OPEC has actually increased its production, almost doubled its, projections for production. And on a monthly basis, they've actually started increasing production by almost 10 to 15% month on month, because OPEC does presume that even though these countries may not shift completely from buying Russian oil, it may be a situation where you start reducing your purchases of Russian oil slowly and start increasing purchases from the OPEC countries a little bit more. So that has already started happening. And the second thing is that OPEC is actually projecting that oil prices could even go up to $150 a barrel which is more than double of the rate that's prevailing today if all countries stop purchasing Russian oil completely.
All right. Well, Mithali and Crore, let's leave it at that this morning. Thank you so much for your time, and that's always a pleasure having you here with us on News9. And moving on, but staying with the fuel story, India has reached its E20 or 20% ethanol blend petrol ahead of schedule early this year. As of February this year, ethanol blending averaged around 18%, with E20 crossing 20% soon thereafter. Now the government is targeting E27 or 27% ethanol blend by this month, even making E20 obsolete. Thereafter, the government is keen to push for E30 or 30% ethanol mixed in petrol by 2030. But there's a backlash. But first up, what is this ethanol blend? Well, simply put, the government wants to reduce its oil import bill and also cut emissions. Now, the savings to government by going ahead with blending 20% ethanol in petrol potentially leads to a saving of over 1 lakh crore rupees per year. Some estimates say that as much as 1,40,000 crore rupees per year has been saved by the government. But customers have taken to social media posting images of car manuals that say their OEM engines are suited to only take E10 or 10% ethanol mix as part of their petrol fuel mix. Some claim that E20 and further dilution of petrol with this flex fuel leads to lower mileage and engine corrosion. Many car models prior to 2023 are simply incompatible with E20 fuel. Government on its part has clarified that loss of mileage is no more than just 1 to 2%, and statistically there is no impact on engine health. But some additional wear and tear followed by inexpensive replacement of rubber parts and gaskets every 20 to 30,000 kilometers may be warranted. So let's unpack the user concerns and the science behind this new flex fuel composition with auto sector veteran Dilip Chenoy. Mr. Chenoy, good morning. Thank you for joining us here on News9. I want to first up understand how valid are user concerns that their pre-2023 car models are in effect incompatible with the fuel available at petrol pumps today.
I think there is, as you said, there's a lot of debate going on here, and it's good that your channel has agreed or has decided to actually look at these concerns. The first thing is that the trials for E10 and the compatibility of the vehicles for this were being done actually since the early 2000s and mid 2000s. Right. And the whole idea here was to ensure that the transition to the new fuel happens with minimal impact on the owners and on the vehicles. Yes, there are two concerns that you have flagged. One is the reduced mileage, and of course, the ministry has come out very, very clearly saying that in cars it's like 1 to 2% or around 2 to 3%, and in two-wheelers it's a bit more. The second issue that you have actually flagged is about the wear and tear of the engines. Right. And the need for replacing specifically rubber parts which initially were seen as not compatible with E10 and then E20. This is a challenge, and I think it is the government has also clarified that these are low cost parts, and I think the SIAM is fully aware of this whole challenge, and I'm sure that the OEs will partner with government to actually address this challenge. But looking at the overall strategic importance, and just before this conversation, you had a full conversation on oil and our imports from Russia and the challenges and the prices going up.
Right.
Now, you talked about 1 lakh crores and 1,40,000 crores. It actually depends on the price of fuel.
That's right.
So therefore, overall strategic importance of the sector, it is important to make these transitions, and I think both industry and the consumers and government have to work together to ensure that this is as seamless as possible and with minimum inconvenience to the customers going forward.
Right, but let's stay on that for a moment, Mr. Chenoy, and the fact that the government is actually likely to save money on its oil import. Is there then a case for government-funded recall of these models of pre-2023 cars for their engine and parts upgrades to make them at least E27 compatible already?
I think that debate is currently on, and discussion is on how do you transition this, right? And India is a very different type of economy, and the customers and all are different. And, you can actually notice it in this whole debate of end of life vehicles of 10 years and 15 years. One of the reasons for doing an end of life vehicle is to actually help customers manage this transition and, go on to new fuels, etc.
Right.
So I think the OEs could actually take kind of a lead here and work with government to actually address this issue, especially if going on to E27 and higher blends. In the recent Auto Expo, you saw even vehicles with higher, capacity to take even up to E100
Right.
being showcased. So I think the technology is there. How the OEs and the government work with consumers to actually make and address the issues will determine the future of how quickly we can go into higher blends of ethanol.
That's right, Mr. Chinoy. But is the concern really limited only to four-wheelers? Because end-of-life norms apply only for four-wheelers. There are enough and more two-wheelers which are on the roads, and these don't really have an end-of-life sort of a mandate, including some very old two-stroke engines. Are those engines ever going to be able to combust this E20 mix, leave alone E27 and E30 going forward?
Yeah, you are right in terms of the number of vehicles, and predominantly India is 70% two-wheelers, right? And the consumption there is like, pretty high. So if you look at the cars, roughly around 53 to 54 million petrol vehicles are roughly on the road. But if you look at two-wheelers, it's close to 250 million. And therefore, in terms of numbers, this is a larger number. And the fuel efficiency actually drops a bit larger, but it's only 3 to 6% in two-wheelers. And the challenge here, I think the engine technology is not the issue. I think two-strokes are mostly, a thing of the past because they don't even meet the emission norms, etc., etc. But I'm sure that a solution will be found as we go forward.
All right. Also help us understand, Mr. Chinoy, what is the global norm for ethanol mix? Now, we know in India for sure that Road Highways Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, has been pushing for flex fuel. But is it a well-tested mix globally, especially because temperatures in India vary from extreme hot to extreme cold, and the combustion of fuel pretty much, varies with those extreme temperatures as well. So what is the norm globally, and are these tests valid for India?
No, I think let's be clear that for the Indian condition, I think tests have been done. I think way back in 2009, 2010 itself, existing vehicles were taken off the road and tests were done for the impact of E10, right? Similarly, in when the transition to E20 happened, similar tests were done. Regarding globally, I think Brazil is the leader in this, and I think the high temperatures is in Brazil also. Some parts can reach high temperatures. There are global rules. I think in the US you are actually having the E10 standard blend, E15 coming in. Of course, you are even they're looking at blends of as high as 51 to 83%. I'm just taking US as an example. And many parts of US, if you look at the South, like Texas and others, have similar high temperatures. Similarly, like Brazil is the leader in flex fuel. They have actually, in Brazil, it's even more interesting because they have flex fuel dispensing vehicles where you can choose the blend that you want. And they have even E100 fuel there. European Union also has common E5 and E10. And also they are introducing, I think, E85, which is allowed in some countries like France and Sweden. In France also temperatures can actually go up higher. EU talks about labeling. So you have different, most countries have different blends there. Brazil, of course, is the leader in this.
Right.
And I don't think, there's a lot of research and all being done, a lot of testing being done before the first E10 was introduced in India, and similarly it was repeated for E20.
Right.
So I think the OEs most of the OEs also operate in Brazil, so they are aware of the challenges here. Two-wheelers is a challenge, and I think the Indian two-wheeler companies are actually on top of it at the moment, and they'll go as the blends increase, I'm sure they will be able to address the concerns of customers.
Right. Before I let you go, Mr. Chinoy, let's just bring the user, the consumer, back in the center of this debate. Now, there is no denying that there is going to be, although minimal impact, but there is likely to be an impact on the mileage. There is going to be additional wear and tear on the engine. And the government is saving money, no doubt, by doing this ethanol mix. Should some of that discount, at least on fuel prices, be passed on to consumers to just make this a more acceptable norm for those who queue up and get fuel in their fuel tanks?
I think you're seeing it actually happening, right? If you go over the last year, whether the price of global fuel has gone up to over 100 or 120 or remained at 70 or whatever it is, the government has kind of kept the price pretty stable. And I think their pricing formula...
But sir, that's also because the government never cut prices when oil came down below 60 or around $60 a barrel as well. So government has balanced it out. Hasn't really given the discount, has it?
No, it's linked to it. And I'm sure when they're looking at the pricing, they're actually factoring in the E20 ethanol mix going forward, because it makes sense to do that, right? And of course, we are talking when, yesterday Niti Aayog released the EV roadmap, right? So there are multiple ways to actually address the fuel challenge. E20 is one of the ways. Of course, it impacts a lot of existing ICE vehicles. But as a country, it's strategically very important that we reduce our dependence on oil. But yes, the benefits should be given to the customers and to the users there. In Brazil, it is actually if you use a higher blend, it's a bit cheaper. Right? So there are models that the country can follow.
All right. So from flex fuel, there should be a natural derivation for flex fuel pricing as well. Mr. Dilip Chinoy, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you.
And with that, we will slip into a short break right here on Morning Brief at 9. Coming up next, the market action on Dalal Street. You're watching News 9.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
भाई ऑन रोड या ऑफ रोड?
रोड ट्रिप पे किस बाइक की सवारी होगी, ये खूबसूरत चिंता आप करिए। टू व्हीलर लोन की चिंता हम संभाल लेंगे विद स्पॉट अप्रूवल एंड लोन अप टू 95%।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week. Don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
Every brand tells a story. And they are the storytellers. The Sutradhars. They present a brand with band, baja and barat to you. They are the Brandwalas.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. Let's bring you all the market action. Markets have opened almost flat this morning, a little bit in the red on both the Sensex and the Nifty 50. Let's pull up the charts and see. After yesterday's rise of almost half a percentage point, this morning the mood on the Lal Street seems to be a little somber. So while the benchmark indices Sensex and Nifty are slightly lower in trade this morning, there's better news coming from the small cap and mid cap space, which are flattish, but small caps seem to be a little excited this morning. Meanwhile, the Sensex is again below the 81,000 level, right now trading at about 80,845. Nifty 50 well below the 24,700 odd mark at about 24,685. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and see which are the sectors which seem to be under stress this morning. And not exactly surprising, Reliance Industries, owing to all the action around Russian oil imports and the uncertainty around the tariffs which are likely to strike India on importing Russian oil, is something which is weighing in on investor sentiment this morning. So Reliance Industries is down about 0.6% or so in trade. Meanwhile, mixed views coming for the IT sector. Remember, they had a bull run yesterday. Stocks of TCS were up as much as 2.5% or so in trade on Monday. But this morning, there's some correction which is seen at TCS as well as Infosys. Remember, both these stocks were in the green yesterday. Meanwhile, the auto sector also seems to be mixed. While Mahindra & Mahindra is down about 0.25%, Maruti Suzuki is up about 0.9 points. Tata Motors, meanwhile, up about 0.5% or so. Remember, the data on automobile sales, retail level sales, is likely to be released by FADA today. So we will, of course, keep a watch on that as well. Meanwhile, banks are also a little mixed, maybe awaiting RBI's rate decision as the MPC concludes tomorrow and Governor Sanjay Malhotra announces the decision of the MPC on rates. Nishal Maheshwari, market expert, joins us this morning. Mr. Maheshwari, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Help us understand, is there a trend line that you can see in markets this morning? Because it seems to be a sort of mixed bag and no real worry or a cause of celebration.
Morning, Karthik. Morning to your viewers also. So, yeah, it seems to be waiting for a final outcome as far as tariffs are concerned. So, I think that's why markets are a bit jittery. Otherwise, also, I think if you look at the earnings side, earnings also has been a bit tepid only.
Right.
But more or less to the expectation. But overall, you are seeing that this year it's going to be higher single digit kind of earning growth. So that's why market is just, I'm saying, meandering sort of a situation.
Right, meandering with no real trend lines that can be seen, at least clearly this morning. But two headline events likely this week. Number one, by way of RBI's MPC decision expected at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And then, of course, the 7th, 8th midnight is when tariffs kick in. Now, we don't know yet whether there is going to be an additional tariff on India. Donald Trump has been threatening adding an additional penalty on India for importing Russian oil, and that's keeping energy markets a little bit jittery. But beyond that, is there any other trigger which markets are waiting for? Or do you think after the MPC decision and the tariff, the final tariff decision, there is going to be some stability?
So market always looks for basically ending the uncertainty, and once your tariffs are in and I think the Trump administration decides at what kind of penalty, I think market is just going to say, okay, this is the kind of loss or this is the kind of amount which India has to pay up. And that's the end of it. Basically, they'll factor in and move on. That's what happens basically. The uncertainty is the problem basically which the market doesn't like. And once this uncertainty is over, you are clear, this is the kind of loss or profit you have, and the market moves on.
Right.
So that's why I think market is just waiting for that final number to come out.
Right. And if the final number is 25%, no change, is that now likely to be seen as good news for the market? Because market seems to be pricing in the 25% tariff plus some penalty on import of Russian oil. But if the number stays at 25%, do you see some momentum to come back in stocks?
I think so. Basically, at least the bottom will be made, because if you really look at it from the Liberation Day tariffs which Mr. Trump put out, you are at 25% is still 1% less.
Right.
At that you are at 26.
Right.
So you're 25 now, and if there is no penalty, I think then that's the bottom for all this uncertainty.
Right. And if the penalty were to come in, worst case scenario, how bad do you think the impact is going to be on stocks, sir?
I don't know basically what kind of, because the number can be anything. So then it is open basically. If the number is higher, then obviously market is going to react very negatively. But I'm saying if it is 2-5% kind of a thing number, then I think market will just maybe one day down and then go on. But if the number is higher, then I think market is going to reassess and try and understand what will be the implications.
All right. Now, let's talk about sectors, Mr. Maheshwari. I want to specifically come to the FMCG sector. And of course, we saw healthy gains yesterday. In fact, even last week seemed to be good for FMCG. But we are seeing a massive correction this morning. HUL is down about 0.6 of a percentage point. Exactly the same sentiment coming from Nestle as well as Tata Consumers. Now, is this again waiting for some sort of a guidance on inflation which is likely to come from RBI tomorrow? Is it waiting for some rate decision, by the RBI? Or is there something going on in the FMCG stocks this morning, because we haven't really seen this sector-wide correction in the recent past?
So I think inflation is pretty much down basically. If you really look at it, even the wholesale has been down less than 2% for some time now. And even most of the economists have put out basically something like a 3 to 4% kind of a number for the rest of the year. So I don't think so inflation is a worry. Interest rate cut also, I do not expect it happening tomorrow, for the reason because RBI is already front-loaded 100 basis point cut, and you are seeing this kind of uncertainty when the Fed is not cutting. Then I think beyond this, I don't think so RBI is going to do anything for the moment. I think there is some amount of profit taking, because the stocks have, I think each one of them have run up for some, maybe 5-10%, and the uncertainties around the market, and that's why I think some amount of profit taking is happening.
All right, so profit taking perhaps on the FMCG space. But let's also talk about the banking space, Mr. Maheshwari, because HDFC Bank is down about 1% or so. Again, perhaps in anticipation of some profit booking before RBI's rate decision tomorrow. But there are some views, while you're not expecting a rate cut tomorrow because 1% has already been given to consumers, but there are some quarters of economists who are expecting that perhaps this is again a good time for RBI to cut rates, simply because with the tariff uncertainty, there could be some spurt by way of growth which the RBI gives by cutting another 25 basis points. How valid is that reasoning?
So I told you earlier, I do not expect any rate cut to happen, and the logic being that you already front-loaded 100 basis point. Fed is not cut. Fed is still saying that they are watching the numbers. So I think you cannot be far away from that, because otherwise you'll have pressure on the rupee. Which we already have. And I don't think so any further rate cut is going to give a very strong impetus to the economy. Because I think the demand has to come, not cutting rates will sort out things.
All right. And meanwhile, in the banking space, IndusInd Bank, which has awaiting shareholder approval, a new MD and CEO, that stock is up about 4.3% or so in trade this morning. But let's leave it at that. Mr. Maheshwari, thank you so much for your time this morning and for joining us here on News.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And well, let's move on now. The much awaited integrated digital portal by the Investor Education and Protection Fund Authority, or IEPFA, is likely to be launched soon, and it's expected to cut down the current processing time for unclaimed deposits to reach their rightful inheritors from over a year earlier to just a few days after approval. Now, once the portal goes live, investors can expect faster access to their rightful assets. Now, currently, once a claim is approved by the IEPFA, it can still take up to 12 months for the shares and dividends to be released. Now, with the new system, this delay could shrink dramatically. Remember, over 1.1 billion unclaimed shares valued at about 1 lakh crore rupees are currently lying with the IEPFA, along with an additional 6,000 crore rupees worth of unclaimed dividends. According to a government statement, the new portal will integrate key stakeholders, including depositories and public financial management systems, to provide a seamless and efficient experience. Now, the IEPFA is also working on a broader initiative called the Niveshak Public Infrastructure, or NPI, which will bring together companies, registrars, transfer agents and depositories under a single KYC framework. Aadhaar-based biometrics and face scans may be used to further verify claims and reduce fraud risks. According to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the integrated portal is now in the final phase of testing and is set to launch this month. And with that, we will slip into another short break. But coming up on the other side, we will be joined by Mohandas Pai to help really deconstruct this mess of big student loans to study abroad in a scene where they find themselves jobless after spending that kind of money. Is the US job scene oversold? That and more on the other side. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
बढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
खूबसूरत सी तुम कोई चिंता करो, भरोसा खड़ा है तुम्हारे, तुम नया कल बनाते रहो।
जब कोई हमारी बाकी चिंताओं को संभाल लेता है तो हम कर पाते हैं खूबसूरत सी कोई चिंता। टाटा कैपिटल में हम आपकी हर फाइनेंशियल चिंता को संभाल लेते हैं ताकि आप करें सिर्फ खूबसूरत चिंताएं।
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Zoho co-founder and chief scientist Sridhar Vembu has raised a red flag over the growing financial distress faced by Indian students pursuing higher education in the United States. Now, taking to social media, Vembu highlighted the case of a student who borrowed nearly 70 lakh rupees at 12% interest rate to fund a master's degree at a lesser-known US college, only to face a grim job market upon graduation. Vembu noted that the IT job scene remains weak, particularly for foreign students, and loan repayments are just beginning. Now, he pointed out that his own company hasn't been hiring much amid its transition to the AI era and its policy of avoiding layoffs. Now, cautioning students and parents, Vembu warned against taking on heavy education loans both abroad and in India, calling it unwise and likely damaging. His remarks come as fresh data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics paints a bleak picture that only 73,000 new jobs were added in the US in the month of July, the slowest monthly gain in over 2 years, with unemployment rising as much as 4.2%. Well, joining us this morning is Mr. Mohandas Pai, Chairman, RN Capital. Mr. Pai, good morning. Thanks for your time. Is the US dream oversold, and in your mind, are the heydays for Indians working in the US over?
Well, let me say this way, that too many people who are now going overseas and studying in very small colleges hoping to land a job.
Yeah.
India has more than 1.2, 1.3 million students studying overseas. This number has gone up tremendously in the last 10 years. And 80-90% of them are not going for higher education. They're going there to study there and get a job and not come back. They think that El Dorado there, they'll get a lot of money. And the numbers are so huge that many of them will not get jobs. Look at Canada. People go to third grade colleges, not the top colleges, which have got no brand, which are teaching shop, and do all kind of silly courses. I mean, these courses don't have jobs. And I think it's a big tragedy because they come in market and everybody gets carried away. Then they have to pay heavy fees. They borrow here, pledge their jewelry, sell their land. See what is happening in Punjab, right? In Punjab, people are selling the land for 1 crore an acre, sending the young person who's semi-educated to Canada, doing all kind of things here, going there as a victim. Then they go to some college and they become victims of the Khalistanis. And so many of these people are going to Australia, they're going to Canada, they're going to the US, to smaller colleges. Australia has now cracked down. UK has cracked down. They see the problem. And Canada also is cracked down. In the US is going on. So my advice is, please do not go to any college or university which is not there in the top 20% has a brand, which has a good track record of placement or internship. And make sure that you take up courses which are in high demand and not social science courses which are just by the way, because they put courses in a very attractive manner and people get carried away. Because most of these young people are from small towns, are poorer families who get carried away by the white man coming and marketing and talking to them and promising great things.
All right. So, of course, a caution now being doubled down by Mohandas Pai as well. But, sir, how much of this problem do you actually owe to, number one, and there are three factors here. Number one, to curriculums not being updated to the real needs of the market. Number two, the countries, all the countries that you spoke about from Australia to US to Canada, now really having a problem with migrant workers or migrant job seekers. And how much of this do you see perhaps being a function of changing job roles with the advent of AI?
Well, my view is that in India, what we need is for the top 200 universities to expand and take in more students because they have the brand, they have the teaching faculty. It's got nothing to do with curriculum. Curriculum is getting improved. I think the key thing is we've got about 4.5 crore young people in college. We graduate 1 crore, which is a very large number, but only 28% of people go to college. And private education has become very, very expensive. And people cannot, good private education has become expensive. The government capacity is limited. In my state of Karnataka, the funding for higher education is not going up, but there's a need for funding and it's become very expensive. So people think that I can pay more and go abroad and get a job which will pay me $100,000, $80,000 because they see it. Now overseas, there is a backlash against immigrants, against outsiders coming and taking away the jobs. Right. And the reason economies are going very slowly and the jobs are not being created and they need jobs in particular areas, but they get people who come there and do some bad courses and try to get jobs, which doesn't work. And when too many people come to a country and they see faces which are not familiar, there is a very big reaction. Now you spoke about AI. Yes, AI is going to impact the office jobs. AI is going to impact the kind of jobs that are there. But remember, a person studying social science courses not going for an AI, not going for an IT job. It's possibly going for some service job somewhere. So that is not the issue. AI is definitely having an impact, and that is going to take some time for it to show up. But please remember, population growth rates in those countries are very small, very less. And people coming to the job market is very less. But the key thing is too many immigrants come, they go through the education and then they want jobs. Then it becomes a problem. The challenge for all these people going there is the courses they study and the skills they get does not have a job waiting for them somewhere. There's a big mismatch and there are too many of them going there.
But sir, is that a problem for them to stay back in India as well? Simply speaking, I think if they are able to afford with a loan, at least studying abroad, does that reduce their competitive landscape? Because in India, if they were to do the same social science courses, what is the likelihood of them landing up a job here in India?
Well, I think, look, I will put it this way. If you're borrowing 70 lakhs to go and do a bad course in some social science course of no consequence overseas, you're better putting the money to work in India and starting a business or putting the money in a bank or not borrowing at all and getting maybe 25, 30,000 rupees starting and going up to 50, 60,000 rupees in 2 or 3 years. Because you'll have no debt to service, right? Even when they go abroad, if you have $100,000 as debt, servicing the debt is going to take you a lot of time. Unless you get $80,000, $90,000, you won't have the money to service the debt and the interest. Interest rates are high. So you got to see what is better for you. A lower paying job and no debt in India, very low debt, or a high debt overseas, a bad course and a low pay and misery staying overseas and trying to pay off the loan.
And those who are stuck in that misery now, sir, stuck with EMIs and no jobs, what is the way out for them?
There's no way out. I mean, there's no way out. They have to keep trying. If they keep trying and it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They have to come back here and try to get a job and work it off. That's why we must tell all young people, barring the top 20 colleges, barring courses which are in high demand, please don't go overseas unless you got your own money. If you're well off, you got your own money, you want to get a finishing, well, you go there and do something, that's fine. But too many middle class, lower middle class people borrow money. I think the borrowing is a big challenge. 70 lakhs. 70 lakhs is a lot of money for somebody who's got no money. Just 2 days back, I got a email from somebody saying, oh, I got a course somewhere, some lousy course. My mother has a mortgage at gold, given 50,000. I have to pay 25 lakhs as fees. Give me money. We're getting a lot of these things today. People get carried away by the prospects of an El Dorado, which is not there. So I think it's a very dangerous situation. And we got too many marketing agencies in India who are trying to market that. Too many middlemen there who give them glorified pictures of what they can do. And you're also showing pictures of, well-dressed young men and women walking in the corridors overseas as if they're very prosperous, right? All this creates that image which doesn't exist. Look, there are jobs, but jobs are very limited and of high quality and certain areas and not in all areas. And there are too many Indians going overseas, borrowing money to get an education which is of no consequence. And that is very dangerous for India and for them.
A dangerous precedent for India and for young students. Mr. Mohandas Pai, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And let's look at some other global stories that we're tracking for you on the show today. US President Donald Trump threatens to raise tariffs on Indian goods in response to New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. India rejects the move as unjustified, vows to defend its national interests. Donald Trump fires his labor statistics chief after weak job numbers, says he will appoint an exceptional replacement to help restore confidence in economic reporting. US State Department says some visa applicants will soon need to pay bonds of up to $15,000 in line with President Donald Trump's migration crackdown aimed at reducing overstays. Over 3,000 Boeing workers walk off jobs after rejecting a contract that would raise average wages by 40%. The strike could disrupt fighter jet production and delay aircraft deliveries in future. Tesla awards Elon Musk a $29 billion interim compensation deal, citing fierce competition for top tech talent and the need to retain its high-profile CEO. US stocks rebound sharply on Monday with all major indices gaining over 1% as bargain hunters step in and bets grow on a possible Fed rate cut in September. Swiss stocks tumble after Donald Trump imposes a surprise 39% tariff on Swiss goods. The move shakes investor confidence and adds pressure on one of America's key trading partners. Shares in British banks jump after a Supreme Court ruling favors lenders in a major motor finance dispute, though risks of large compensation payouts still loom. Beijing lifts a severe weather warning but urges vigilance after evacuating 82,000 residents due to flood threats in and around the Chinese capital. The US State Department is planning a new visa rule that could make it more expensive for travelers from certain countries to enter the United States. Now, under a proposed 12-month pilot program, business and tourist visa applicants from countries with high overstay rates or poor internal documents may be required to post a bond of $5,000 to $15,000. The move is aimed at tightening entry rules and discouraging visa overstays as part of Donald Trump's crackdown on migration. The State Department is expected to publish the proposal in the Federal Register on Tuesday. This comes just a week after the department added extra in-person interviews for many visa renewal applicants, a step that was previously waived. The State Department justified the launch of the pilot program by calling it a key pillar of the Trump administration's foreign policy to protect the United States from the clear national security threat posed by visa overstays. Now, the Wall Street US stocks bounced back on Monday with all three major indices rising more than 1%. The gains came as investors picked up bargains following Friday's steep sell-off and as hopes grew for an interest rate cut in September. Those expectations were fueled by weaker than expected jobs data, which signaled a cooling labor market and renewed talk of rate relief from the Fed Reserve. Take a look.
Stocks rebounded Monday following Friday's sell-off, with the Dow rising 1 1/3%, the S&P 500 adding about 1 1/2%, and the Nasdaq climbing nearly 2%. Investors sought bargains after Friday's bleak jobs report and increased bets that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates at its September meeting. Odds for a reduction next month stand at about 84%, according to CME FedWatch. Market participants see at least 2 quarter-point cuts by the end of this year, though SWBC Chief Investment Officer Chris Brigatti isn't one of them.
I'm still a naysayer on Fed rate cuts this year. I believe 1, maybe 0 is more likely than not, in my opinion, still. I haven't changed my mind on that, but I'm wavering a little bit, to be honest with you. But ultimately, I'm concerned about the fact that we could have stickier and higher inflation, and for the Fed to cut rates into a rising or even a stickier inflationary environment does present some problems. So I'm still a little bit of a naysayer that they will have the bandwidth and the ability to cut rates going forward.
Stocks on the move included Tesla, which advanced 2% after the electric vehicle maker granted CEO Elon Musk a pay package of 96 million shares, worth about $29 billion. And shares of Spotify gained 5%. After the music streaming platform announced plans to raise the monthly price of its premium individual subscription in select markets from September.
And staying with stock markets, Swiss stocks opened sharply lower on Monday after US President Donald Trump imposed a steep 39% tariff on goods imported from Switzerland. The surprise move sent the country's main blue chip index down nearly 2% at open as investors digested the potential economic fallout. The tariff is one of the highest yet under Trump's sweeping trade overhaul targeting America's top trading partners. Take a look at this report.
European shares ended 3 straight sessions of declines Monday and recovered some ground from Friday's sell-off. But Switzerland caught the market's attention as stocks there hit their lowest in more than 3 months. The top 10 fallers on the Stoxx 600 in early trade were Swiss. Investors were spooked as they took in a major 39% tariff rate the US placed on the country. Swiss manufacturers warned Friday tens of thousands of jobs were at risk after being hit with such a heavy rate. The US is a top export market for its pharmaceuticals, watches, machinery and chocolate. The levy is also much higher than the baseline tariff of 15% faced by the EU, Japan and South Korea. Swiss luxury companies Richemont and Swatch were among the most exposed to tariffs. Swatch CEO Nick Hayek called on the Swiss president to meet Trump in Washington to negotiate a better deal. Swiss pharma stocks Novartis and Roche both slipped at the market open. Pharma exports weren't included in the tariffs announced Friday, but investors took note of a letter President Donald Trump sent to the leaders of 17 major pharma companies directing them to slash US prescription drug prices.
And finally, Tesla has awarded CEO Elon Musk 96 million new shares worth nearly $29 billion in a bold step to retain his leadership. Now, the grant comes as Musk challenges a court ruling that struck down his earlier pay package, calling it unfair to shareholders. Tesla says the new stock award is critical to keeping Musk focused on the company's long-term goals. We leave you with that story.
Tesla has granted new shares worth about $29 billion to CEO Elon Musk. The move aims to keep the billionaire in charge while he fights a court ruling that voided his original pay deal. A Delaware court stopped Musk's 2018 compensation package last year, which was valued at more than $50 billion. It said the Tesla board's approval process was flawed and unfair to shareholders. Musk kicked off an appeal in March against the order. He claimed a lower court judge made legal errors in rescinding the record compensation. Tesla formed a special committee earlier this year to consider Musk's compensation. It said in a filing the new pay award is designed to gradually boost Musk's voting power. Both Musk and shareholders have said this was key to keeping him focused on Tesla's mission. It added that if the Delaware court fully reinstates the previous pay award, the new interim grant will either be forfeited or offset. Tesla itself is at a turning point. Musk has shifted focus from a promised affordable EV platform to robo-taxis and humanoid robots. The company has lost about a quarter of its value so far this year.
What are you watching, Dad?
Don't you often say, think before investing in the stock market? So I'm trying to gain some knowledge.
From whom?
That's this stocks expert. Makes great educational videos. Gives good investment tips too.
Dad, don't rely on such videos. Do your own research.